What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Shane Vitko Podcast. Had a bit of a week, got a little bit sick, wasn't sure if I was going to do an episode, and here we are. Today, I am honored to have my good friend, former NHL hockey star, Sheldon Souray. Sheldon played for the New Jersey Devils. He played for the Edmonton Oilers. He played for the Montreal Canadiens, the Dallas Stars. I met Sheldon in California around 2018-ish, 2019, something along those lines. You're somebody that I consider a friend, and it's like, we have these kind of conversations that I feel like a lot of men don't have. And because of that, they suffer, and you're another one of these guys that I value in my life. We have real life conversations. We break balls. For anybody that's wondering if there's anyone still on the planet that tortures my life and breaks my balls, rest assured that Sheldon takes full responsibility for that. So, anyways, dude, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I got nothing but love for you, and I'm really excited for what we got going on today.
Yeah, buddy, exact same. It's good to be here, and just listening to you there, it's funny how our conversations have changed from 2018 to 2025. So I'm looking forward to the chat. Thanks for asking me to come on, buddy.
Now, real quick, I obviously know a lot of your story. Not all my viewers do. And I know that you've been pretty open and honest about your time playing, kind of your struggles that you've had while you were in the NHL, life after the NHL. But where did you grow up?
I grew up in it's called a Métis settlement in northern Alberta. So in Alberta, they have Métis settlements. So there's an Indian reservation that borders kind of our settlement. And then there's a Métis settlement. I'm from Fishing Lake, Alberta. And it's just a small community, small native community. All my family's kind of still back there. And that's where I grew up. But from a young age, once I got to about kindergarten, we moved to a bigger city, or a bigger town, actually. And then we moved into a city because there wasn't the schooling. I have a sister who's 2 years older than me. And my parents just wanted to get us out of that environment because there wasn't a lot for us to do. And it wasn't like super healthy for a couple of young kids who, our parents wanted the best for us.
Now, for somebody that doesn't know me, is a reservation like that? Do both parents have to be native, or can it be like, are both your parents native, or can you have a white mom and a native dad, or vice versa?
Yep.
How strict is that?
You can. So typically it's an Indian reservation. Both parents are treaty Indian, which means you're full Indian. You got a card, for all the taxes and all this stuff you hear about. A Métis settlement can be my mom is Métis, and then my dad had a little bit in him, but he didn't come from a reservation or a community like we did. So yes, your parents are more, it's not biracial, but one is a member of the settlement, and then they can marry whoever they want.
Right. So mom got free parking at the casino, dad didn't.
Mom bought smokes tax-free. Yep.
Solid. All right. So I want to get into your childhood a little bit. So what was the temperament or the temperature of your house growing up, and who did you have to be, I guess, for your parents growing up?
So kind of my earliest memories is we were living in Edmonton, and for whatever reason, this seems to be the earliest memory I have, was my mom and dad getting in an argument, and I wanted to play catch in the back with my dad. He just got off work. My mom was cooking dinner. She's like, "Don't bug your dad." And my parents got into it. And my dad got up, and they got in a little scrap, and my dad was gone, and I didn't see him for a little while. And that didn't make sense to me because I was used to being with two parents, and now I'm living with a single mom, and I miss my dad. And when you're 5 years old, you just don't understand that my dad not like me, whatever. Luckily for me, both my parents were always in my life. They always got along after that, especially I think once I got into organized sports, they both wanted to be a part of that. My dad really wanted to drive that bus. My mom was more, you know, a provider. My dad was more of the guy who was, taking me to practices, that kind of stuff. So I just kind of grew up like that. It just kind of got normal. I didn't love it. I thought that, friends that I had both parents were together and it all seemed like, Partridge Family. But I never really felt like I had to be anybody other than who I was. I was always a big kid. I was always a bit rough around the edges, but I didn't, but my dad was still around, so I didn't feel like I was carrying any weight or anything like that. And yeah, it was kind of just like that. And that's kind of how it was till I got drafted in the NHL. I will say this though, that I grew up a lot of my childhood with my dad because my mom being a single mom, my sister was 2 years older. I was out getting in trouble and, doing what I was doing, 8, 9 years old. So she's like, you got to go live with your dad. And so I lived with my dad. My dad was married and divorced 5 times. So he was, there was women in his life, women out, they get in fights. I'd overheard it was because of me and my sister, mostly me because I was living with him at the time. And so in some ways, like it was unsettling with my dad, where my mom, I don't know if she's ever dated since my dad. And it's just kind of it was always home. It felt more safe and homey. And once I got a little bit older and I was living with my dad, like 11, 12, 13, um, I was starting to notice the drinking because my dad was an alcoholic. I'll say
But
that.
you had both worlds then. So you had being with dad, which was a lot of chaos and a lot of fighting and all these things that I would say ultimately ended up shaping how some of your relationships ended up
Hmm.
going. But then you
Yep.
also had this place of safety and security and like I feel like it's both things, right? Where like with your mom and over there, it's like you're seeing your feelings matter, stuff like that. And with your dad, it's more so trying to figure stuff out on your own.
Yeah, that's right. Like suck it up, and if you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. That tough love sort of thing, right? And so I was starting to really notice my dad's drinking, like being gone and coming home drunk. And my dad wasn't the like, hey, I'm going to put cigarettes out on your feet type drunk. He would be gone for a little bit, and I remember being around him and he was a big personality. And so he'd be, kind of the life of the party. And that was a great time to ask him for $5, right? Because he was going to give you like, that was my dad.
Start the
Um,
manipulation young.
Yep. Yep. I was like, okay, I see an opportunity here and I want a Slurpee from 7-Eleven. So let's go ask him because normally I would never ask him for money if he was sober. He'd go, get out of here, go make your own, go cut a lawn. Right. So I will say this, that the first time that it kind of, my dad's drinking kind of showed up in my life and affected me. We had moved to this town in northern Alberta. My dad was working at a car dealership. I was living with him. I was in a new junior high school, and a couple weeks into school, I was kind of bike riding with my with these two girls who were in grade 9. I was in grade 7, and these couple of these high school guys rolled up on me, and who do you think you are, this and that, and so. Well, I was talking to one of them. I got sucker punched by the other guy. And so I went home, was embarrassed, obviously grade 7 around new people, bag of peas on my eyes. And my dad wasn't home. He didn't get home that night. And I went to school, got myself to school the next morning, and I didn't want to go because I was embarrassed. But I knew I didn't want to face the wrath of my dad. So school was the better part of that. Anyways, after school, I came home, I had a little black eye, and my dad said, what happened? And I told him, and he said, are you afraid of this guy? And I said, no. So a couple days later, my dad comes home. I get home from school, and my dad says, hop in the car. I said, okay. So we hopped in the car, and we went to this guy's house. And my dad knocked on the door. This other guy's dad answered, told him what happened. He said, yeah, this other guy's dad looked at him and said, get out on the front lawn. And we scrapped it out, and I gave him a beating. And we got in the car, and my dad was so proud of me. And a part of me was proud of myself too, but a part of me was really like, what the fuck did you just make me do? Like that's fucked up, right? Um, So that was my first kind of introduction to like that really affected me. I didn't like the way that felt. He never did that again, and the greatest gift my dad ever gave me and my sister was getting sober when I got drafted. He passed away with 21 years of sobriety. And again, I didn't grow up in this home that was all, but I grew, all alcoholic-ish. But I grew up in a community where drugs and drinking that was it.
So real quick, so when this happens, when he takes you to the house, and you had told him you're not afraid of this kid, so I guess did you have? Was it what drove you for that fight? Was it the shame of kind of that, like you said, you got beat up and this kid gave you a black eye, and you were drawn to the fact to rectify that, or did you have a little bit of fear and then you learned how to turn that fear into aggression?
Well, to be honest, like if my dad would have said, well, we're going to go to this guy's house, I would have talked him out of it, or I would have said, I'm not going. So it was really, I was in shock that happened. But I also wanted to please my dad, and I knew I was, I knew I had that in me. But I've never had it in me on like someone else's terms, if that made sense. And I was a kid, dude. I wasn't like street fighting every day. I mean, I didn't grow up like some kids grew up, and that. Um, so it was more just like, well, now I'm here. Now I'm scared. Now don't want my dad to be ashamed of me. So if I get beat up, I get beat up. It wasn't really, I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't have time to
Yeah.
talk myself out of it.
Yeah, I had a similar situation like that. We were there was a pond they used to free. Well, it was like a soccer field that they would flood and ice over for the winter, but we called it the pond. Anyways, I was down there skating, and kids from other towns would come over and skate. And there was another kid there, and I had get into it, same thing. And like, he just kind of, it's not like we fought, but he kept breaking my balls, and then eventually, like, punched me in the face or did something. And at this point, my dad pulled up, and then he did this kind of thing of like, I don't give a shit if your dad's here, or talking all this shit. And same thing where my dad was kind of like, go over there and fight this kid. And just like you said, at that point for me, it had nothing to do with fear. It had nothing to do with chasing chaos. I wanted to make my dad proud. I wanted to prove to him that I was a man, and like the sad
Exactly.
reality is that I wasn't a man. I was a fucking kid. And
Yeah.
those kind of situations where you're forced to kind of become a man sooner than you're supposed to be, I guess, is, it's like in a part it's detrimental, but in another part it's like you start to feel this, I have this
Exactly. I
belonging,
got this.
my dad
Hmm.
proud, and, I got it from here. Unfortunately for someone like me, I didn't have a good gauge on when enough was enough. It would always push the envelope, and that doesn't always go over so well either. Okay, so when's the first time that drugs and alcohol show up in your life?
Well, I had always, 15, 16, 17, I was drinking, I was having fun. Girls were a part of it. I get drafted at 18. Now I'm still having fun. Now I signed a contract. Now I got money to have fun instead of going to 10-cent draft night with Brant. Now I got some money. But I had always, during my whole career, I had always had a healthy fear of having drinking, because drugs weren't really a part of it then, of having a fear of like that drinking would stop me from being an NHL player. I had always, like I
You
said,
pick
where I
and
come
choose
from.
kind of at
Yeah,
first.
I could pick my spots. We have a day off on a Saturday. I probably took it too deep, and I went harder than the older guys. Obviously, it's just a thing. And the older guys now is a rough and tumble guy, and now they wanted to. The older guys were taking me drinking. The old, Doug Gilmore, Lyle Odeline, and it's no fault of theirs. It was just what you did back then, and it was camaraderie. It was team building. It was like leadership for them, right? But I always felt like, man, I don't ever want to fuck this opportunity up, because I like I like the accolades and the pats on the back I was getting from it. And obviously I liked playing. I had made it to the NHL. So I thought that was great. So I'd always had a healthy fear. And I've been in trouble a few times, been pulled over when I was shit-faced drunk, and just got the get out of jail free card. If I was playing today, those guys would be in jail on TSN, right? And on ESPN. So it was a different era. I think for me, I had a lot of injuries in my career. And, the painkiller thing wasn't like a big deal to me. I just wanted to get back and play. I wanted to show that I was a real team guy. And if they said 6 weeks, I wanted to come back in 5, Um,
Yeah, so I
so,
feel like at first it's like you were able to distinguish my career comes first, because
yeah,
here's the thing: as a kid that grew up playing hockey and loved the sport of hockey, and I know just playing up until I was, whatever, 16 or 17 until I pissed that away. But the amount of time, energy, and effort that you have to put in to develop yourself to become a hockey player, to then, I know a lot of people that have made it to the NHL or at least to something close to that equivalent. And that has to become your life, that your conditioning, the way you're eating, what you're doing. And I feel like early on, especially going in at 18, that as you know, I mean, you can do way more damage and, like you said, go out drinking and do all that stuff and bounce back from that a lot quicker than you can when you get older.
35 for sure. I also think that, um, having that healthy fear of it and seeing some of the stuff that was happening in my family with alcoholism and, like I said, dude, my first year I went to camp. I signed a deal right out of camp as an 18-year-old. The next year I went in and I was fat and out of shape. Uh, our GM in New Jersey was Lou Lamoriello. He sent me right down to the minors. They hadn't even cut anyone from the training camp yet. I was the first guy sent down. And then every summer since then, every practice I was doing extra. The next summer I was in New Jersey training with their trainer. So look, I credit my career to Lou Lamoriello. First, he gave me the chance, and then he invested enough in me and believed me enough. It was like he was almost harder than my dad because he had leverage on me. He could send me down to the minors,
Right.
but he chose not to. He chose to kick my ass a little bit and say, "Okay, you're doing this, and he let me see what being a professional was like. And so yeah, I always wanted to it's not like prove them wrong. It's like I just always wanted to make somebody proud. Like if they believed in me, I wanted to
Well, I
get
feel like
going.
as any kid, and then like you said, I mean, as a teenage kid playing in the NHL, and it's like, sure, you got your dad, but now you have this new male role model of like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make you proud.
Also someone at the top of the food chain. Like it wasn't my junior coach, it wasn't my agent. Like this is the guy who's signing checks for me, could change the entire trajectory of my life. So I felt like, man, this guy's like, okay, there was a couple warning shots. There was a couple like, you do this again, you're never going to play in the NHL. I'll bury you. There was a couple of those moments, but I felt like I could always, I wanted to redeem myself from those. And again, like I said, it's just making someone happy. And I didn't want to give that up. Like I was threatened with it, right? Like we're going to send you down the minors and you'll never play again. I just imagine like having to call my mom and dad and say, "Hey, I got sent down today." "What do you mean? You played 2 years in the NHL already?" "Yeah, I was, boozing in New York City and I got pulled over." And the shame would have killed me.
I
It would
think,
have killed me.
there's a lot of similarities that I can see between the military and professional sports. And I remember for me in boot camp, I would wake up and have nightmares that I couldn't do it. It was too tough. And I
Mm,
went home and like
yeah.
I would wake up and be like, as crazy as it sounds to be like, thank God I'm still here at boot camp.
Yes.
I always had this thing of the same thing. I have to go home with my tail tucked between my legs. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. I wasn't tough enough. It was too much. And here I am. And that shame and that guilt of thinking that was a thing. And, that becomes a driving force. It's
Yep.
like, I'm staying here and sticking this out. Before we move on to the next thing, so 18 going to the NHL. What are you? Are you full of fear? Are you full of excitement? Are you, I guess, did you already have kind of a history of being like a, because you were a bit of an enforcer and a fighter and stuff. Did you already have that role, or did that start to develop a little bit more? You got into the NHL, or as an 18-year-old kid going against men with full beards.
Well, it was kind of opposite. Like I was, once I turned about 14, I was already, I was kicked out of midgets for clotheslining a guy coming across the red line. And I'm the youngest guy in the team. So I got to go play in BC in this jungle hockey league. And then I played 20 games there and I had 10 fights and I'm beating everybody up. And so I was tough because I wasn't that great when I was playing, right? So by the time I played juniors, and was tough and our buddy Brant Myers was the toughest guy back then for 3 years already. And I fought him, broke my leg. He's like my best friend in the world. Right. But that put me on the map of like, oh, this he's got something in there. Right. And so I was picked by Jersey, drafted by Jersey, and they were known to be a really rough and tumble team. And I was kind of being groomed to be the next Ken Danico, who's a legend there. And so I kind of knew where I fit in that box. I actually got my start in New Jersey because Kenny went to rehab. So I got called up from the minors early in the season and I never went back down. Kenny now is a part of us, is a part of our group. And man, I love the guy, but that's how my opportunity came. And so I knew what I was there for. It was in an era too when you cross check a guy in front of the net and they fall down, you come to the bench and your coach is going, "Hey, great shift," right? It wasn't like you're getting a penalty and you come back to the bench and like you're benched for the period. But through those first couple of years in New Jersey, Jacques Lemaire saw my defense coach was Larry Robinson. I'm with two, Hall of Famers, and they saw something in me that I had more potential than I was showing than just trying to play 10 minutes a night and, cross check guys and getting a fight. Also, dude, and this too, it's like when you get to the NHL, you're not fighting guys from the Alberta Junior Hockey League. These are the toughest guys that have played hockey across the world, across the globe. Russian guys, Swedish, it doesn't matter, right? And to be honest, I wasn't that level of enforcer. So when they said, "Hey, we want you to work on, your skating and your fucking stick handling," I was like, okay, anything to do less of what I was kind of being groomed to do.
Right.
And, I got that opportunity when I got traded to Montreal, 2001, 2002, I broke my hand and I had surgery on it. The doctor said, "We don't know if you're ever going to be able to play again." Dude, I just got married, just had a kid. A kid was on the way. And I remember thinking, damn, man, how would I support all these? I was making $1 million. So I was spending $1.5 million. So hockey was the only way out. And I was sitting up in the press box one day and I overheard a couple scouts. They didn't really know who I was. And they're talking about, the Habs could really use, a big shot from the point, someone who could clear the net. And I'm going, dude, that could be me. And something just switched right then and there where I'm like, I think I got more to give. Now, obviously being threatened with my career and, well, I don't know if you're going to play again. And then hearing that, I'm like, I got more to give this thing. And so that's when my career started changing, I think, a little bit. Was we had a lot of injuries. We weren't really great back then. And they said, "Okay, you're up." And it's just the opportunity came and I didn't want to let it go because I didn't want to go back to, fighting Stu Grimson. Like that wasn't my
That's
level.
but that's what proves what the difference between people that play hockey like me and people that make it to the NHL, to be that well rounded, to start to like shift your playing style and shift and see what your strengths are, and and have this kind of self-talk with yourself of like, I think I can give more than what I'm doing. Like you said, I'm better than this. I got 10 minutes a night to cross-check one guy, punch somebody in the face, maybe win, maybe lose. It's like, let me work on my shot. Let me work on my stick handle. Let me work on my defensive skill. And how do I utilize my time here the best way I can, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Started doing a little more, right? Staying after practice a little bit. Like I wasn't the hardest worker in the room. I will say that, but I did have a lot of, like fight in me, like I wasn't going to go down that easy.
Right.
And I think there's a difference between working really hard and having some sort of internal fortitude to like be like, okay, dude, it's either me or you. It ain't me.
Yeah.
And then, just it's opportunity, a little bit of luck, some injuries, and that just really, it set the stage for the rest of my career, that like I could do this, I could score some goals on the power play. I was still tough, becoming more of a leader, just stuff like that. And it really playing in Montreal really shaped, I think, the hockey player on the ice and also off the ice, because you have, as you know, being from Boston, you play for these teams, dude. There is no escaping it. There is no like, okay, I'm going to get away from the rink today. We just lost 8-1. I'm just going to go to, the best restaurant, and you just don't do that. And so it really made me like, become professional, um, at least to the public.
Yeah, yeah. So, when's the first time that drinking, or I don't know if drugs have entered yet, but when's the first time drinking or using or whatever cost you something?
So when I was playing in Edmonton, um, and I broke my hand, my right hand in a fight, and I got this infection in it, and I'm in a hospital bed, and they're talking about cutting my hand off, and the Oilers think I'm faking an injury because I want to trade. But I was on like, dude, I had a really bad infection, and so I was on all sorts of medicine, like the painkillers, the antibiotic they were giving me was for like cancer patients. So it's super emotional. I had all these things, and so I after that season, when I heard they thought I was faking it, I was wanted to fight the GM, and it started getting there, and things started. Then that summer goes by, and I'm ready to come to training camp. I had a great summer of working out. And my agent calls me like 2 days before training camp, and he goes, "You're not invited to training camp." I'm like, "Dude, I made the All-Star team last year. What are we talking about?" They just said you're not invited. And I said, "Okay." So I got sent down to the minors that year in 2010 to Hershey. They made a big deal of it. They weren't sending me to their farm team. I had to go to another farm team because they didn't want me to be a cancer. So we're taking this little uh, uh, moment in time and blowing it up like way out of proportion. I'm like, okay, well, it's the first time I really learned though that this is a business. I'm not the king of the castle. The guy who owns the team is writing checks, and um, so anyways, I go down to the minors that year. I break my hand in a fight in the first 3 games because everyone's coming after me. And I called the GM and I said, they're like, "Oh, we heard, you broke your hand. Too bad." I'm like, "You fucking idiots. What did you think was going to happen?" And so that year I had a lot of injuries. I was in the minors. I'm living in a hotel. Pills started to be a relief for me from some of that. But again, I was trying to get back to the NHL. But it was the first time I kind of noticed like, okay, today I probably don't need the pills. I feel like the pain's kind of gone. And I would come back after practice and I just pop a couple because it, kind of gave me some relief. So I started noticing that was happening, but I was still playing. So, um, I forgot about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a big deal, but it was always in the back of my mind. But when I retired, dude, like my last season, I played a half a season in Anaheim. We had the lockout. I was an older player. I could see the writing was on the wall. Signed a 3-year deal. I just wanted to get through that half a year and like, you know, end up getting hurt.
Well, hold on.
And so
Let me back you up real quick before we get to the end. So when this goes down, you're playing for Edmonton. This is when you got the infection in your hand. They got you on all kinds of meds across the boards. And you noticed it, but did you at this point go like, I might have an issue with this? Or did you just try to like use the injury of like, well, what do you expect? I'm in so much pain. I'm on these meds. And like, did you have were there any teammates that kind of noticed or were like that you could talk to openly, or was this still just a Sheldon's
Yeah,
circus
it was just
charge?
I was like, I can still manage this. It wasn't like, I wasn't using pills every day, but if there was a party on a Saturday, I'd throw a couple in my pocket, have a few beers, and but it wasn't an issue yet. It wasn't getting in the way of my professional life, because the next year after that year that I was with Edmonton, I signed in Dallas. I played a year in Dallas, kind of had a comeback season. Everything's kind of on the right track. Signed a 3-year deal in Anaheim. And first year was only half a year because of the walkout. And when I got injured at the end of that last year, I broke my hand again, and I just knew I was facing. I thought it was severe enough where it was probably going to end my career. But I went through the summer training. I went, and right before I went to training camp, I felt something crack in my wrist. So I go back. I, did the courtesy rehab for a few weeks. And then it was like, okay, man, you have to have surgery and it's going to end your career. And I'm like, okay. I had the surgery. I've never talked to anyone from hockey again. Like, I'd never talked to the GM again. I never talked to a coach. The odd player would text me once in a while, but it wasn't like when I was done, dude, that was it. There was no checking in. Hey, what do you think about next year? It was just, you're gone. You're out of sight, you're out of mind. We have a team to worry about. We're not worrying about you. And that was that was all I needed to have no responsibilities and do whatever I wanted to do.
And I was going to get to that later on, but since we're here, do you ever feel like at any point in time that the league owed you something, and more to that point, did you ever feel any resentment towards the league when you left or the way that you left?
I didn't feel resentment to the league because the league is the league. They don't care about Sheldon Souray. So I never really, I got to play for teams. I had a lot of resentment toward the Oilers because they, tried to publicly humiliate me. And I thought that was like it was so petty. And I think that cost both of us, because I was ready to play that year. I was ready to play for a trade. I was motivated to come back. And I thought that, um, it was just like, it was stupid. It went too far. Right. But again, okay. And then in Anaheim, when they said, okay, it's over and no one ever called me back. Yeah, I had resentment for a little bit. Like, fuck, man, I was, don't they know what I did in my career? Like, but, it just kind of subsided. It's like, I kind of get it too. Like, I kind of get that they're still paying me for 2 more years, which affected my addiction because I was still getting paid, but I wasn't playing.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like
Yeah.
exactly, wasn't hitting me where it hurt or anything like that. And so, dude, once I started again, the pills then were starting to become a big part of my life. And, when I take a few pills, it kind of just calmed me. I'm not really thinking about the Ducks. I'm just like, thinking about retirement, living on a sunny beach somewhere and, living off of millions of dollars. Well, it didn't work out that way, but, that's kind of where it was taking me. And that was what started it. And then having no one to answer to.
And I'd imagine too that it starts off as this fun thing, right? Well, like you said, I'll throw a couple of these in my pocket, take 2 or 3 of them, swig them down with a beer, have fun on a Saturday. But at a certain point, that bleeds into, if I don't have these tomorrow, I'm gonna get sick. Like,
Oh yeah.
have to take these. It's no longer about being fun. When did that? How long was that after retirement?
Yeah, it was that year that I retired when, I had the hand surgery and they wrote me a script for whatever 30 and 2 refills or whatever it was, right? To, this guy said, I have a guy, he can, get you 50 pills off the street and they're this much. And I'm like, 50, dude? Like, that'll last me for 5 years.
Right.
I don't need that many, but at least I have them. 3 days later, I'm calling the guy going, how many can this guy get? Well, I think he's got 100, then 500, then 1,000, then 2,000. It just was like so insane when I look back on it. how fast my life was becoming brutal. I hated my relationship. I hated myself. I was exactly what you said. You know, for me, if two is good, four is better. If four made me feel that way, I think six next time will kind of get me right where I want. And it just happened really fast. And exactly, it's like, well, I'm not taking these tomorrow. It's like, well, fuck, you aren't. You wake up and you're, feel like you got the flu every day. It just became like that. And I just started taking more, and then I was having more fun. And then I'm, doing this and doing that. And it, as you know, it just happened so quickly for me, where it was a problem. It didn't take long for people to go to me like, what's up, dude? You're not yourself.
All right, I want to shift gears real quick before we get into kind of how bad it got, and then once you've turned it around. Now, I know that you have your son who is two, almost three.
It'll be two in January 4th.
So he's about a year younger than my daughter, and it's cool, man, to watch kind of our kids growing up, together. Obviously in Texas and in Vegas, but you get a redo now, right? So, what kind of father were you to your daughters during the worst years?
It was tough. If I have a regret, it's with my daughters. It's like you parent how you've been parented in some ways, right? And my dad was a strict parent with me. I think I was like that with my daughters. I had unrealistic I didn't know, dude. I just didn't know. And I think that I was playing, so I didn't spend much time with them. And then I was going through a divorce that lasted a couple of years, and their mom and I weren't really on speaking terms, and it was making it tough. And then when I would see them, it would be, I'd be with nannies, and because I couldn't take care of two young girls by myself, I just didn't even know how. So I would say out of a 10, I was a four. Like I wasn't a great, it's not that I didn't love him. It's not that I didn't but I felt like, hey, you guys want new bikes? I got you new bikes. You guys wanted, the Barbie castle and the Barbie dolls? I got you that. Why are you still, wanting to go home to mom? Because you've been with me for 2 days. So I was feeling like, man, my own kids don't even like me. And then when I got into my addiction, it wasn't good because they were seeing me. They were worried about me. They've seen me going to the rehabs at the very worst of it. And so, but my relationship is good with them. I'm super proud of them. Youngest girl's Scarlett's in college. Valley's doing her thing, and I'm really proud of them. I'm just I wish I knew. I tried to do the best I could with what I knew. I didn't know a lot about being a parent, and so
Well, but I think
I
it's
hate
more
that.
than that. But and this is my thing, right? Is where it's like, even with our parents, like they did the best they could with what they have, sure. But I think the difference with you and with kind of this newer generation is being able to own your shit, where you can now have conversations with your both adult daughters and say, hey, look, I know maybe I didn't make the best choices. I know I didn't, like, giving them that peace of mind that you are willing to own, hey, I didn't do the best, has to be a huge relief for them. And I feel like because of that, that's how you're now able to carry on and have a better relationship with them. And, not to mention giving them now a sober dad, which is better late than never, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that you and I are lucky to be in this program and be sober and do some work. Like this hasn't happened overnight, as you know. We came in around the same time, and it's I don't know how they feel, but I know how I feel. I know I was able to make amends to them. And, I don't know if someone who's at the time, 18 or 15 really understands how hard that could be for a guy like you or me. I know you haven't had to do it, but I had to like go say, hey guys, sit down with them crying and like go through it. But I know the one thing that they do feel now is they could call me for anything.
Yeah.
There's no, our house is a safe house. Your Tess is unbelievable with both of them. She's really close with my youngest daughter. So I know that they feel safe now and they could come to me with anything, where I think before they would have been like, oh, dad doesn't care. I just, the nannies would take care, whatever it would be. So I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to at least make amends to them. And, dude, I'm their dad.
Yeah.
They're stuck with me. I'm stuck with them. And I love it. I'm super grateful for it.
What's one thing that you wish they hadn't seen in your active addiction?
I think, you know what I think? I think that the relationship I was in, uh, they didn't like the person I was with, and I think maybe feeling like I was more on that side than my kid's side. I think probably I wish I would have been able to, in hindsight, look at that and go like, my kids are the most important thing in my life, not this, not this. Um, and I know they probably felt like that. We've talked about it because they didn't like it, and I'm like, well, that's you got to learn to like it, right? And so I wish I had been more, you know, more on their side
Yeah.
than my own side, you know.
And life today, without recovery, there's no relationship with them. You probably don't have your son. You don't have Tess. You don't have any
Exactly.
of these things.
Oh well, I'm dead.
Right.
I'm dead.
Yeah.
That's the way that you should be dead, and I should be dead, and that's just the fact. That's not like embellishing or like, man, you're being dramatic. It's like the things we were doing, dude.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be alive right now, and it's through
I think it's
through a higher power.
it still blows my mind when I see people that have tried drugs once or done cocaine once and somebody's heart stops, and I'm thinking, I used to mainline cocaine
Right.
on the regular.
Right.
Like, why?
What are you doing? Rookie dicks, yeah.
Get picked, and I made it. It's like it's such a Russian roulette, dude. Playing with drugs, playing with your life like that, and I was willing to pick up that gun with 3 bullets in it at all times, and had no problems with it.
Well, bro, think about now, 8 years down the road with what we were doing. Think about with as much as we were doing, what we were doing 8 years ago. I just know with the pills, with fentanyl, with the whole thing,
That's another thing.
I just wouldn't have woke up. And so I'm so grateful at the time. Man, I don't know what it was. It was just I was tired of feeling that way, and I don't know. It's I can't even say that with actually wholeheartedly. Like, I was tired of feeling that way. I need to get some heat off. I wanted to feel. I didn't want to be sick in the mornings. And then I thought, when I get out of this rehab for 30 days, I'm just going to casually. I'm just going to do a few pills here and there. I'll have beers on, my birthday and Super Bowl. And like, it wasn't in my mind my first time I went to rehab. Like, I'm never going to do this again.
Right.
It's just, but thankfully, I didn't die.
Yeah. Now, is there one thing that you wish you could have gone back and changed in your career in the NHL?
Probably having the confrontation with the Oilers. Probably having the confrontation with the Oilers, because I think that I think it affected them, and I think it did affect me. It affected my relationship. It affected my trust in the organization. It embarrassed me to go down to the minors. So I wish I probably handled that better. Although I definitely don't believe I was wrong. Do you want to be, what's the saying we say? You want to be right, or do you want to be happy?
Right.
I should have just done what I had to do and come back the next year, have a great year, and maybe got traded to a Stanley Cup winning team.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Good. Now, looking back, do you think hockey saved your life, or do you think it slowly destroyed it?
Well, it saved my life. It saved my life, because if I didn't have hockey, I don't know what maybe a policeman, if I was being honorable, uh, maybe in construction, maybe a truck driver like my dad. And man, I can't even imagine where I'd be. So it definitely, it saved my life for sure. And it gave me this life that I have today, the means to have the life that I have today. And so I'm grateful. I don't have any qualms about it. I will say, when I retired, I thought my life was over.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. The first night the jersey's off and you're not putting it back on again, what goes through your mind?
I mean, dude, it's like a death. It's like a death. You're mourning, which is funny because I felt like it was a relief, but I never really felt relieved. But I felt like it should be a relief that I don't have to go in for practices, that I don't have to have that fear of the young tough guy coming after me, that I don't have to travel and play 3 games in 4 nights and, Tampa and then Detroit and then Nashville. Like, so it should have been a relief. Um, but when I went to rehab, so I retired was at 13. And then I was in rehab beginning of 17. So in that 4 years when I was in like a real addiction, the first rehab I went to towards the end of my stay there, the ladies like, hey, write a letter to hockey as like a grieving letter. I'm like, grieving?
Yeah.
Fucking crazy. I'm not grieving it. And she's like, oh, really? Okay. And so we talked through that. And at the time I didn't get it, but when I got sober the next time, I'm like, you know what? I was grieving because I was never going to put the jersey on again. I was never going to hear my name on the intercom for a goal or a fight or a starting lineup or whatever it may be. I would never get on a plane again with my friends. I would never be in the trenches with you lose 8-1 and you're at the practice that you dread and you're all going through it. That's what's shining the diamond, right? And those were all the things that I thought were the nuisance of playing.
Yeah.
The games were what was fun. But you said it earlier, and I think that's a really good point. And I say this all the time: the games are the reward. That's when everyone sees you on the ice and they're cheering your name and they're wearing your jersey. They don't see the practices where you're getting bag skated with no pucks. They don't see in summer when they think you're in Hawaii having a vacation where you're doing dry land training in 110-degree heat with 3 other guys. Like, it's a job. There are no days off. There are no, I'm going to take Sunday off. It's like, it's a job. And, when that all comes to end, it's like, I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Well, I feel like, again, the parallel with the military thing, and like, I've done some things that have been military with former pro athletes thing, and it's exactly what you said, right? Because not only is the camaraderie and the brotherhood and all these guys that you share all these experiences with, the good, bad, and different, blood, sweat, tears, that just stops. That's gone. And then also where it's, I don't want to say chaos, but you are used to a life of high stimulation. The
Yeah.
crowd, your name being called, scoring, cheering, all this stuff, like that is a very high intensity, high paced job that you do that is can be rewarding, can crush your soul, but like it's always so stimulating. And then to just like, hey, interested in real estate is like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
how long do you think it was that you that grieving process took some time, right? I mean, ultimately you got sober, relapsed, went back, and then ended up doing it. And then it was later on down the line where you went, holy shit, it's been, a few years that I've been grieving this without really kind of admitting that.
Yeah, so the first rehab I went to was January 17, which I told you about was kind of towards the end of that, where they're like, well, write this grievance letter to yourself. I'm like, I'm not doing that. You want me to go get a massage over here? And probably want me to go to this, drum ceremony and pound a drum for the guy who's leaving. I'll do that, but I ain't writing a letter to myself, dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know you know what I mean, but it wasn't the second rehab that I went to, which was in September of 17. It didn't take that long. And I was clean for about 7 months of that. And then in 2 months, I was back in rehab. It was worse than ever in 2 months. And I took that rehab seriously, because I was in the hospital in the ICU for about 11 days coming off of what I was coming off of. And, I was out of it. Like I woke up, I thought it was 2007. It was like the light went on and it's like, what's everyone doing in the rooms? Like, you're awake. You've been sleeping for 14 days. Like, we haven't been able to talk to you. So I took that rehab. That was a hard lesson in there. Like, I can't believe my mom could not have a son because I was just using too many pills and drugs. So that rehab I took very seriously. And then I started taking suggestions. I started going like, okay, that first one didn't work. In 2 months, it's gotten 10 times worse than it was when I was out there again. And so started learning what it meant to be sober. I was looking, the best part of the rehabs was the guys who would come in from the institutions and jails, right? The guys who had 6 months or whatever, and they'd come talk to us. And that was the best part of, the 2 or 3 days a week, was 1 hour of someone telling me their experience, strength, and hope. So I started going like, this could be cool.
I got to imagine for a guy like you too, that the suggestion piece, because I know for me it was tough, but for someone like you that is as a former pro athlete, you've won the A on your jersey for assistant captain. You've been in this leadership role, and you got some skin in the game to go. Who the fuck are you to tell me anything, right? And I mean, I feel like you got to really, really learn how to humble yourself and put your ego to the side and go, you know what, this could be somebody that maybe has something to teach me, And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in recovery and sobriety, is always to remain teachable. No, as soon as I think I got it figured out, that's when I'm, all bets are off.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, and I know we're going to talk about when we came in and our sobriety journeys, but it's like when you're in the Army, you're coachable. Your drill sergeant says something, you're not going, fuck that, dude. That guy can carry my back. You do what you do. So you're coachable. So you at least listen. You might not agree with what they're doing on the power play. The coaches are, doing the game plan, but I was never standing up and going, that's dumb. Let's do this. Right. So I never did that. And then, especially once I retired, I wasn't listening to anyone. What are you talking about, dude? I got the car. I got the house in Malibu. I got all these shiny things. I'm still making money. And you're going to tell me that I can't have a beer? Okay. Until it hurt bad enough where I was like, there's got to be something to it. Because all these guys that I know in LA and all these guys who are in A are happy. And I don't get, how could they be happy? How could they relate to what I have? I have all this stuff. And why am I not happy? How can I relate to them? They don't have anything, but they're happy. It was a real conundrum until, and as you know, no one's going to do it for you. You just have to have something. It just has to go like, man, I got to do something different. And it's not like I came up with these ideas on my own. I fucking went to AA and I was like, I felt like a 2-year-old. I was dumb. I didn't know anything. I didn't want to be a rookie in anything again, in your profession or my profession. If you're the rookie, it means you're getting ragged on. It means you're doing extra work. They're making fun of you. They're making you do these embarrassing things. I didn't want to do that again in AA. I just didn't want to be a rookie at anything again. So the first time I came in, I kind of knew it all. Hey, as our friend Senator says, the shortcuts are the fastest way to the back of the line. That was me the first round. It's like, you guys can keep your step work. You don't know the willpower I have. My whole life has been built on willpower. So I got this. I don't want to tell someone my secrets. That ain't happening. So I had all these like preconceived notions of what, how I was going to get sober.
It's funny, man, because two things is, I remember when we first met, and you are a larger than life presence, and I remember how thinking to myself, man, this guy's got it all. He's got it all together. He's got all the answers. He's got the good looks. He's tall. He's got the, beautiful girl. He's got all the cool sneakers and the car and all the things. I'm like, man, that's, and then I remember when you went out, and I remember thinking to myself, how? I mean, you have all the things. You were one of the nicest, funniest guys. Everything was great. You were skipping around. Life was fucking grand. I don't get it. Yep. And then to see you come back and, with 5+ years now, and how different your approach is, right? You're still a larger than life personality. You still got all those things, but you can see what matters to you now. It's almost like, those blinders get taken off of what you thought was the most important, and which is ego driven, and it takes kind of getting your balls kicked in a couple of times in our case before you finally go. And it's, for me, one of the hardest things was learning surrender. I remember when they would keep being like, you got to surrender, and I'm like, are you crazy, dude? It doesn't exist in my life. I will never surrender. until
Right.
I finally had to go, dude, I surrender. I surrender to the fact that I'm powerless and I don't have all the answers. How about that? And once I realized that, I'm not saying I surrender to just like put me on the ground and everyone wipe your feet off on me when you walk into the house. And once that kind of started to make sense to me, I was like, all right, yeah, I think I can. I think I can surrender to this, you know? I think another point is that it's funny the views that we have, right? Because here's you, a guy going, I got all the things. Why would I listen to them? Where I'm going, how do I listen to, have you even had struggle in your life? This guy's driving a brand new Tesla. He's got a Rolex. He's got his, he smells like nice cologne all the time. Like, look at these guys. They don't even know struggle, right? And it's
Yep.
like, boy, was I wrong, to sit
Yep.
there and think that I can judge or know somebody's story. And then it's like, the more I stuck around, stopped making it about me, put my ego aside and listened and went, oh, wow, this guy had nothing and then built a life, or this guy had a life, burnt it to the ground, and then rebuilt it. That's when I started asking questions. How do I fix my credit? How do I apply for a credit card? How do I open
Yep.
a bank account? What are your steps towards how I get out of debt? And that's what I started doing was, instead of comparing or being like, I'll never be able to get what Sheldon has, I'll never be able to get what this guy has, was, hey, what are some recommendations you make so that I could potentially one day have the things that you have? And that mindset changed so many things for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I, when we met, we hit it off right away because we were both like, I think you were coming off a pretty hard relapse. So this was your time of really kind of getting into it, get into breath work. I think you had a willingness at the time when I met you to, that you were at least going to do it differently. Right. And you and I would sit and we'd have coffee and we fucking hit it off. We talk about the Bruins, the Habs. We talk about the guy who was sharing, what a fucking nerd that guy was. And I'd like to beat this guy up who walked in late. This guy was eating food next to me. I'm going to fucking slap him off his chair. So we just got along. We just, from the moment we met, right? Bug you about prison. You bug me about other shit. And we've always got along. But I think I had to see, for me, I had to see guys that I liked or admired, you being one of them, right? At one point, I would have had more time than you, I think. And you got maybe 3 years more than me because I went back out. But I seen like this guy's a fucking hard ass. He's got the tattoos, he's got the jail stories, he's got the fucking skull shirts. I'm like, but he's cool and he's listening to this stuff and he's staying sober week after week at these cool meetings and then I other friends Brant, and then it started being like, I don't think I got what they got because these guys are, every meeting that I would go to, which at one time wasn't a lot, you were at. Every meeting that I go to, Brent was at, Eli was at, Court was at, Senator was at. And house parties, and I say this because these guys are openly sober, Bradley Cooper and Ben Affleck. So I'm seeing these guys, JB, right, Brolin, and seeing these guys living these big full lives, having money, uh, having cars, just a life that they were happy with. I'm like, okay, I gotta see that because I gotta know it's possible because I couldn't relate to the lawyer who was in there. I couldn't relate to the doctor that was in there. I couldn't relate to the construction guy who came in all dirty. And so once I started seeing guys like you and guys who are now friends for life and doing this, I don't think I would have got this because my ego and my willingness, it just wasn't, my ego was still high, my willingness was still low. So it took guys like you and our friendship and talking shit and then saying, got to, and then seeing you take commitments and then seeing seeing how our talks evolved from the first month that we got sober and the first month we met each other and second month and we're joking and we're sending memes and to like, we've had conversations over the last couple of years where it's like, dude, my life is hectic, kids, wife, moving, finances, how do I handle this? And we've had like some real talks over our friendship of like, damn, dude, like how did this happen so fast that things got good?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's such a beautiful thing and something that's like, it's just crazy.
It's
Like you
just
talk
not
about all these
something that
promises.
I really ever had too. Like everything was always so surface level. You know, how you doing? I'm great. I'm good. Why you asking? Who cares? Shut up.
Right.
What's going on?
Right.
What are we doing tonight? You know, whereas now so many of the conversations I have are, how's your wife? How's your kid? How's the business going? What's going on with you? Like I never even asked questions. I didn't give a fuck. I was so selfish that it didn't matter. You know, it was
Right.
just like me. Let me tell you what's going on with me. Okay, I gotta go. You know,
Yep.
and it is, man. It's a trip, and it's, you know, I'm so grateful that I have guys. You know, when I first got married, first had my kid, it was like you, our friend George, my friend Dominic, like a few of these people that I had to call to be like, dude, what did I sign up for? Like, I don't even
Yep.
know what I'm supposed to do, you know, and
Yep.
nobody does. There's no manual, but what is there is guys that have been down this road before me. And they've figured out how to do this without sticking a needle in their arm, without going out and drinking their lives away, leaving their wife
Yep.
and kids. And those are the men that I call. Water seeks its own level. So I'm calling the guys that have been in these situations prior to me and asking them, what did you do? How did you get through this? And, you know, I'm forever grateful for that. So before we wrap up, give me a, talk to me a little bit about Tess. How'd you meet Tess? What's your life look like today? What are we doing? What's Sheldon Souray doing in 2025?
Okay, so like I told you, I think when I retired, I thought my life was going to look completely different. I had two girls who were now in their teens or early teens. I still had all this stuff, and okay, now I'm going to get sober. So now life's changing a bit. I met Tess in my first rehab. I was in a relationship and she was only there for a few days. I think I was on my way out. She was on her way in, but as you know, she's beautiful and she walked in. I'm like, okay, but I didn't, there was no, until after about 6 months, we lost like four young people in that rehab to overdoses and died. And one I knew she was close with. And so I kind of sent her a little note like, hey, I can't believe that. And I knew she was close with them. And I was close with this kid too. I was like his dad in there, a young kid, really good looking kid going to Oregon. And he just this kid, good looking, played the guitar, all this stuff. And so when I was told that he died, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what? Like, why didn't you take me and have this kid? Like, that's how it, if life was fair, and I always used to say life is not fair. It's not fair. The kid who has cancer and gets taken from the parents, that's not fair. So don't tell me that life is fair. Anyways, so I met Tess there, and I when I relapsed, I was kind of going through it, and I wasn't being truthful with her, because we were talking about how good it was to be sober. I wasn't fucking sober. I was still chewing a lot of pills, and I was probably worse than ever, lying to her. And so I went dark. I told her I was going to Dallas to see a brain doctor. Might have, they want to do some CTE stuff. So still lying through my teeth. I just didn't want anyone to know I was going back through rehab. Well, what I wasn't expecting is to be in that ICU unit for 11 days, to be in I think I didn't get a psych ward, but she thought I died. Right. And because all these people were dying and it just went dark on her. We were talking, texting pretty much every day. Anyways, so I told her where I was. I got honest with her. She said she was glad. I was there. I was alive. I was safe. I do my rehab stint there. I come out. The day I came out, we're going to a mixed meeting. We're going to a meeting. And so we just started doing meetings every day. We just started, she hung out with you. She hung out with our friend group. She's maintained her sobriety from that very first day. It was a natural thing. Like, it was someone I can go to meetings with. And the first 6 months were awesome until I got connected with the West Side Men's Group. And then my sobriety changed a little bit and hers changed a little bit because now we're going to different meetings. And it just grew into this thing, like you said, like I never had. I had a friendship. There was someone I liked that I had feelings on a different level that I never had. Like, I really respected her. I respected her career. I respected that she was sober. I respected that she was so much older and wiser. She wasn't out looking to party. She wasn't out, I wasn't ever worried she was going to cheat on me. I was never. And anyways, Fast forward to we get married, which I said I would never do again. We get married. She stuck with me through my relapse and she didn't sign up for it. I remember looking on her face and going, I seen the pain that I was causing someone that meant something to me. And I'm like, I'm done. I just, again, like you, something just clicked and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing this a different way. I'm going to start going to the meetings. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start being honest. I'm going to start being vulnerable. I'm going to do the work. It wasn't my sponsor's fault that I relapsed. It was my fault. So same sponsors, Court, who I love. So we get married and then, we get on this journey of, do you want to have a kid? I'm like, dude, as you know, we talk about all the time. It's been the single greatest blessing in my life is being able to be a dad again at this point in time, right? Still having my girls, having a wife that I absolutely love to death, but having this little human that's like I look at him and I'm like, dude, the world is your oyster, right? And I always go back to that thing again. We've talked about this a lot of times, but it's like our kids do what they see. They don't do what I say. Hey, don't, eat junk food. And then I'm got my hand in a bag of potato chips. They see, and I think over the last few years, we've been able to do some, talk about you and I, like, because I know we're in the same boat. We've been able to do some esteemable acts, right? And so we're building a little trust in ourselves, a little character, a little integrity. And so I get to the point where we have our children and it's like, this matters more to me than anything else in my life, more than a pill ever will, more than a drink ever will, more than getting divorced. Like this is my legacy, sort of. I don't mean to be that like dramatic about it, but it's like I love being this kid's dad. I love it. I love being a dad at my age. I thought, dude, I'm going to be like, 46, 47, having a baby. Like who had that on their bingo card, right? And it's just, as you know, I know it's the greatest joy of your life and it's the greatest joy of my life. And I'm so grateful for all of it because I didn't see this being possible.
Yeah. Well, you're a stand-up guy. You're a good friend, dude. And, like I said a bunch of times, I'm grateful and I value you in my life. So thank you, dude.
Same, buddy. I love you, dude. You know how it is.
Yeah. I love you too. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and, sharing your story with us. And thank you for being somebody that's in the, in the limelight, if you will, that's being willing to be open and honest about your journey and what that looked like. And, my goal with this, as it's been since day one, is that somebody sees this and it changes their life or it saves their life, or they go, man, if this guy can do it, or if, like when people at me go, dude, if Shane can get sober, anybody can do this. Great. If that's the motivation that it takes for you, awesome. You know what I mean? Or there's a young guy playing in the league right now that's struggling and doesn't know who to talk to, and by chance happens to catch this, and he hears something or relates to your story and goes, man, I got to make some changes,
I'm glad. Let me just say this before we wrap up. It's like, dude, your leadership in our group, you're a pillar in it because you obviously talk a lot of shit, but you also back it up. Like you're honest, but you're also doing commitments. You've ran a meeting that is the staple of AA for the last 3 or 4 years. Like you've done that. You've started that. We have such a cool group. You've got your feet moving to do this podcast. You've got your feet moving to do breath work. You've done all these things. And I think that's more an example of what is possible than anything I could ever do. So I'm just really grateful that you're willing to just keep doing these things. Cause it's like Brant, when he started his podcast, right? He's like, I just need to help one person. It started out small. All of a sudden he's showing me texts he's getting from people on Instagram. I'm like, oh man, that was, and your honesty and your humility and your shit talk, your way you do AA is attractive to a lot of people, including me. So thanks for asking me to be on this. I think your 12 or 13 viewers are going to be.
It's great. I'll tag Sheldon's Instagram in the somewhere. It's at Sheldon Souray 44, I believe, right? No underscores, no weird shit like that, right? All right, dude.
Straight up.
I love you, bro. Thank you so much for coming out. We'll see you guys next episode.
I love you, bro.